Hey folks, welcome to the channel, and welcome to my build for the Dagger Challenge. Here's all the steel we're going to use, and here's the design. We're going to be doing a Quillian dagger. So let's talk about all this steel. This is 1095, this is 15N20, and this is pure nickel. This is just a piece of 150 layer Damascus that I did in a previous build, so we're going to use that later on in the build. Let's stack it up and get it in the forge.
The graphic in the corner is a rough representation of what I want the final pattern to look like. Remember folks, this is the Dagger Challenge against all of these YouTube channels. At the end of the video, please go down in the description, click on the link, and vote for your favorite. I'm going to use the graphic in the corner to represent what the billet looks like. The black being the 1095, the gray is the 15N20, and that white layer, that's the pure nickel. Right now I'm forge welding all the layers together to form one cohesive billet. The billet is now forge welded and squished down a little bit. Now we're going to draw it out, and then we'll go to our next step, which is turning it into C's. Now using the squaring dies, I'm going to knock in the corners, and that's going to make it look like the graphic in the corner. I do another heat with the squaring dies just to make sure I get all the corners pushed in. Then we're going to rotate it 90 degrees to get ready to squish it down. By squishing down the corners now, I'm going to get a nice bar of C's. And this is what we're going to restack to get our pattern. Here I'm using some kiss blocks to make sure that the billet gets the exact same thickness all the way down. And finally, I'm just trying to square this up and get the corners as sharp as I can to get ready for the restack.
Alright, I've taken that bar that I've just forged and I've cut it up and ground the sides, and I labeled every one of these to make sure they go in the right order because we want these to go so that all of the ends line up perfectly down the bar. Alright.
After a little dip in kerosene to aid in the forge weld, I tried to get these into the forge, but they're actually a pretty tall stack. I ended up having to put it sideways. Now I should have the pattern that's in the corner. I'm forge welding that stack so it sticks together and we'll be able to draw it out. After we forge weld this and start to draw it out, it'll start to look more like this. Remember, this pattern is on the end of the billet. I'm going to want this pattern to actually be on the blade. So I need to draw this out really long, chop it up into pieces, and stack it up really high, and then forge it on its end.
So we got the surfaces all ground. We're going to flip them all, and then I'm going to use this stainless steel tube. I'm going to cut it just to encase it all so you get a perfect forge weld.
I actually decided against the stainless steel tube, and I tried just to TIG weld all of the seams. That worked out really well, and I was happy with it. Now remember, this pattern is on the narrow edge of this billet. The graphic shows you what that looks like right now. Once we forge weld this together, we're going to cut it in half lengthwise on the bandsaw, and then flip it and mirror it and forge weld it back together.
So here's the billet after forging. Looks really good on this side, but on this side, got a big crack right here. I don't know how deep it goes, but that's why you want lots of extra steel. So I don't even need this piece. I could just kind of break this off, cut this off, and save this. I definitely have enough steel here to complete the project, but I might just grind into it and see how far that goes. It looks like it goes at least 1/4 inch, so I probably just want to cut it. I'm debating if I'm going to use this piece of 150 layer Damascus to go in the center, because I have a lot of steel here. Next step, I'm going to clean the edges. I'm just going to grind off the edges and then probably cut it on the bandsaw and see what I'm dealing with.
I'm just tack welding this to a piece of steel so it's easy to hold in the bandsaw.
So here's the billet. I had a couple little surface cracks, so I just ground those out so that they wouldn't go any deeper. I'm not sure you can see, you probably can't, but the center pattern, there's not that much of the black left, so I'm actually going to take these two pieces of 1095 and just forge weld them in the center so that I kind of want that a little thicker. All right, and I'll weld it up, then I'm going to grind this flat. We should be good to go.
Now that we've mirrored and restacked our billet, it's starting to take shape and look like our final product. Now to forge weld this stack together. Now it's time to draw this out so we have enough length for our dagger.
Well, this was such a long forging session that the camera overheated, so you guys missed a bit of it, but it was really just me drawing this out. You can see that I got way more steel than I need, which is great. Next steps, I'm going to have to put in a tip, and this whole thing has to be forged to profile. I'm not going to forge the bevels, but it has to be forged to shape to retain the pattern. I'm sure I'm going to get another knife out of this, unless something goes wrong in here. All right, next step.
First, let's cut off the end nice and clean. Now I'm cutting some fish lips into the billet. This is because I want to forge weld this tip together, If I don't, it won't look like the pattern converges to the tip of the blade. I want that to be nice and symmetrical. Now that I've forged those fish lips back together, now we're going to draw it out and make it nice and narrow and taper towards the tip. Now finally, our pattern is coming together. Now that I see the pattern, I do wish I would have done another restack before the tall restack, just because the pattern gets a little stretched out here, but oh well.
Here it is after forging. I've just cleaned it up a bit on the grinder, on the angle grinder, just to take some scale off. You can see the blade right now it's like 13 and a half inches. So it's really long, quite a bit longer than I wanted. I had the pattern on one side, and the pattern's actually, I pulled the end back, and even so, it's an inch and a half longer. It's a shame to waste this material, but I don't want it to feel like a short sword. So I'll see. I'm going to do the profile on the tip, and we'll see what it looks like.
I know a lot of people watch Forged in Fire and think the majority of the time is the forging, and I see we're already halfway through this video, but really the rest of the video took about 5 times longer than what you've seen already. Now it's time to put in the bevels. This is always a tricky part with the Dagger because there's 4 bevels that need to be perfect. I'm starting with a Broadback incinerator belt. These are the best belts on the market. Go check down in the description if you need a link. Hey folks, I hope you're enjoying my build for the Dagger Challenge. Remember, this is a challenge and we want you guys to vote. Down in the description and in the pinned comment is a link for you guys to vote for your favorite build. So go watch all the builds, come back and vote. Thanks guys.
Here it is after the initial grind. Pretty good, pretty symmetrical. The line is pretty much down the center. There's a few little wavy spots, but I'll clean those up in the final grind. Alright, now it's time to do some heat treatment. Here it is after heat treat and temper. It's nice and straight. Let's go do some final grinding.
I didn't show it, but this one tested right out at 60 HRC on the tester. Now it's time to start working on the guard. This is just a piece of mild steel. I'm marking it out so I can mill the slot. Now to put a little shape in those quillions.
So I did a bit more work on the guard. You can see that not only did I bend it, but before I did that, I kind of took some off here. Then I just took some files and kind of rounded the edges, and then went to the grinder and round these off. These are going to get some little clamshell marks. You'll see what I'm going to do here. And then I just cold bent these. So there's the guard so far. I'm going to leave that for a little while. Now I'm going to work on this spacer.
This is another piece of mild steel. Then we're going to move on to the pommel, also in mild steel.
So I did a little more work on the guard, just tapered this a little bit where the spacer goes so they meet up nicely. Okay. You saw me do the pommel. So next thing is, in the very center of this, there's going to be a channel and there's going to be some inlay. Same with the center of this right here, right in the middle of this little piece. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take this little, it's almost like a slitting saw, but this is an abrasive disc. I'm going to put this in the mill, put that groove in there, and then I'm going to use some silver solder, and I'm just going to press this. I'm going to hammer in the solder in that channel. Let's go do it. So I put the channel in there, and it's deep enough. I don't think I need to undercut it. I did this on a little test piece. Now I'm just going to hammer in the silver wire and hope for the best.
Now it's time to put those little clamshell marks at the end of the quillions. This was actually pretty fun to do.
So here it is with the guard and the spacer on it. There's the silver on the spacer. I also did it on the here, so that turned out really good. I did the little clamshells on the guard, which I think came out really nice. Now onto the handle. So I'm going to be using this maple burl from Siberia from my buddy Oleg. His link's down in the description as always. So go get some wood material from him. Molly! Stop barking! So you can see I put a bolt through it because I'm going to turn this on the lathe. Let's go do it. So here's the first time with it all put together. So I really like it. It feels good in the hand. And I know many of you saying, wow, that looks great. But the spiral fluting, that's really what's going to set it apart.
In order to do spiral fluting, you need to set up a grid system on your handle. I'm going to do a whole video on this, so if you're interested in that, check out my Triple T videos coming soon. I purchased this high-speed rotary burr exactly for this reason. This thing spins at 400,000 RPMs. And now for a lot of tedious file work.
So it's time to twist the wire for the wire inlay on the handle. So I've got this wire, I'm not sure what its gauge is, but it's really thin, but we're going to twist it. So what I've done is just taken a big loop, I'm going to hook it here, and I'm just going to attach the other end in my drill, and I'm just going to spin it. Well, folks, that sucked. I was putting this in my sanding vise, and I guess I didn't notice that I had this kind of right up against it, and when I cranked down on it with the bolts, it snapped off this tip, which really sucks. It looks so nice with that little piece sticking out there, so man, I guess I'm going to have to just kind of bring this in and round it a little bit on both sides. It'll still look okay, but it's a bummer. Here we go, the final moment of truth. It has been sanded to 800. We're going to just kind of wash it in distilled water. I've already cleaned it in acetone. And into the acid it goes. So I've got all the fittings in the hot salts. Be another 4 or 5 minutes. They'll come out, get immersed in water. We should have jet black fittings. Look at that, nice black fittings.